Usually at these events, Ross Sandler, our founding director, will give you greetings. Today, we're going to have Ben Max, our executive editor and program director, who organized today's program, give some more remarks and give you a background of the commissioner. I think it'll be fitting. Ben has been a wonderful addition to the law school in the year and a half that he's been with us. And I can say that the law school has been thriving in terms of our visibility and ability to give our audiences critical information in real time about what's going on in city service. So with that, I'll ask Ben to come up. I'm looking forward to the commissioner's talk today. We will. There'll be a microphone that goes around. Ben, why don't you come on up? Thanks.
All right, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you, Dean Crowell. I'll try to be brief, as I know everybody's here to hear the police commissioner. As the Dean mentioned, I'm Ben Max, executive editor and program director at the law school's Center for New York City and State Law. We're proud to be hosting the center's 197th CityLaw Breakfast, continuing a 30-year tradition started by Professor Ross Sandler. As the Dean mentioned, he's on sabbatical this semester, but nevertheless very happy about today's program and others that we've been doing. Before I introduce Commissioner Tisch to give her remarks, a brief thank you to our center team, especially Veronica Rose and Rose White, who really make these events happen, as well as the New York Law School marketing, events, security, and other teams for making these events happen. We've recently hosted a city controller candidate debate and a mayoral candidate forum on parks. Both of those events are available on the NYLS YouTube page, among other events that we've hosted recently. And there's a couple events coming up that I just want to make you aware of, and we hope you'll join us at. On May 1st, we have a special Law Day briefing where I'll talk one-on-one right here on this stage. It'll be a little bigger, with New York City Department of Investigation Commissioner Jocelyn Strauber, discussing courage, independence, and government integrity. So please join us May 1 for that event. And on May 13th, our 198th City Law Breakfast will feature a presentation by New York State Comptroller Tom DiNapoli, who will talk about New York City's health as it relates to state and federal funding and more, with an eye on the MTA and its future. So Comptroller DiNapoli will be here May 13th. And if you're registered for this breakfast, you'll get emails about those events to RSVP. All right. Today, we welcome the 48th Commissioner of the New York City Police Department, NYPD Commissioner Jessica Tisch, who was appointed to the position by Mayor Eric Adams on November 20th, 2024, and took the helm of the NYPD 5 days later. So she now has roughly 4.5 months on the job, but she has come in with purpose and an agenda, shaking up the department while also seeking to bring it much-needed stability. Commissioner Tisch had a background in the NYPD, but most immediately moved from having been the city's sanitation commissioner, appointed to that post by Mayor Adams early in 2022. She's credited with having run the sanitation department well, advancing major efforts at rat mitigation and quality of life, including the implementation of a trash containerization program, a revolution, as they've been calling it, that is really taking hold these days, a big shift in moving those unsightly and unhelpful piles of garbage bags off our sidewalks and streets and into containers. Prior to that, Jessica Tisch was commissioner of the New York City Department of Information Technology and Telecommunications, or DOIT, and citywide chief information officer from December 2019 to January 2022. A lot of that work coincided with the onset and worst of the COVID pandemic, when much of city government had to move online, or at least hybrid, and there were major technology-based projects that had to be stood up quickly. Before that, the commissioner was a 12-year veteran of the NYPD, rising to Deputy Commissioner of Information Technology. She oversaw the NYPD's 911 operations and led efforts to use technology to transform key NYPD processes, including how officers are dispatched and respond to 911 calls, take crime reports, and search for wanted or missing persons. She also managed development and implementation of the Domain Awareness System camera network, and she helped ensure that every officer was equipped with a smartphone, giving them access to real-time information in the field, and managed the implementation of the NYPD's body-worn camera program. A lifelong New Yorker, Commissioner Tisch began her public service career in 2008 when she joined the NYPD as a counterterrorism analyst. That was after she earned degrees from Harvard College, Harvard Law School, and Harvard Business School. I won't go into what Commissioner Tisch has been doing since taking the helm at the NYPD. I will let her talk about that. Please welcome Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Ben, for that very warm introduction and for the invitation to join all of you again here at New York Law School's CityLaw Breakfast. I've always admired this series, not just because of who shows up to speak, but because of who shows up to listen. Civic-minded New Yorkers, public servants, law students, and people who care deeply about this city and the way that it's governed. The last time I spoke at this breakfast, it was virtually, back when I was the New York City Sanitation Commissioner, and the city was just coming out of the pandemic. Different role, different times, but the same belief that city government works best when it's in conversation with the people that it serves. And I know this crowd appreciates candor, so let me start by saying this. Leading the NYPD is not just a role, it's a responsibility. Every day, we're asked to prove in policy, in practice, and in principle that we can keep this city safe and uphold the values that it stands for. That's what I want to talk to you about today. Not just about what we're doing, but how we are doing it. What's changing, what's working, and what still needs to be fixed. Because public safety is the foundation of everything else in New York City. And that foundation only holds if it's built on trust, on accountability, and on real results. And if there is one thing that I've learned across my career, from technology to sanitation to public safety, it's this. Progress does not come from accepting the status quo, it comes from challenging it. And every time we've moved the city forward, every time we've done something that makes life better for New Yorkers, there's been a team of lawyers behind the scenes helping to make it real, crafting policy, navigating complexity, making change possible. So let's talk about where we are. Overall crime in New York City fell by 11% in the first quarter of 2025. We saw double-digit declines in our precincts, in our subways, in our public housing. Major crime was down in every patrol borough. Retail theft, misdemeanor assaults, and hate crimes all trending downward as well. Our city hit major public safety milestones last quarter. Some we haven't seen in a generation, and others we've never seen before. From January through March, shooting incidents were at their lowest level in recorded history. Not just the best first quarter ever, the best quarter ever. So far this year, So far this year, the NYPD has seized more than 1,500 illegal firearms, part of a long-term effort that's taken more than 21,000 guns off our streets since Mayor Adams took office. And that effort is saving lives. In the first quarter of 2025, shooting victims in New York City dropped by 23%, one of the most significant declines we've seen in years. These are more than numbers. These are lives saved, families kept whole, neighborhoods protected from the trauma of gun violence. Murders were down more than 34% citywide, making this the second lowest quarter for homicides in modern history. In March alone, murders fell by 51%, the lowest level we've ever recorded for that month. There were 0 murders in our subway system, the first time that's happened since 2018. Murders in NYCHA developments dropped more than 36%. And in neighborhoods like East New York and Melrose, areas long impacted by violence, we are seeing a real course correction. Some zones have seen crime fall by more than 50% with 0 shootings so far this year. How are we doing it? The progress did not happen by chance, it happened by design. 30 years ago, my mentor, Commissioner Bratton, launched one of the most transformative policing strategies in American history, CompStat. It used data to identify emerging crime trends, hold precinct commanders accountable, and drive down violence across the 5 boroughs. It worked, and it saved lives. But CompStat was also a product of its time.
IPD accountable. Why haven't you fired Lieutenant Jonathan Rivera yet? Why haven't you fired him for killing Alan Felice? You need to hold your NYPD accountable. He's a multiple serial offender. He's a multiple serial offender. He's got over 40 cases pending. He's abused New Yorkers. He does not make New York City safe. Why don't you take your own advice of your own deputy commissioner and fire him? Fire Lieutenant Jonathan Rivera. He killed Alan Felice. Fire Jonathan Rivera. He killed an innocent man. He killed an innocent man.
We need to continue the program, please.
Jonathan Rivera, now! Fire Jonathan!
All right. I will just, if we could just close that door. All right. 30 years ago, my mentor, Commissioner Bratton, launched one of the most transformative policing strategies in American history, CompStat. It used data to identify crime trends, hold precinct commanders accountable, and drive down crime across the 5 boroughs. It worked, and it saved lives. But CompStat was also a product of its time. It was built around precinct-level data in a city where precincts vary widely in size, in population, and in land use. And it was powered by the technology of the 1990s. The data compiled on that first Hewlett-Packard 386 was less detailed, and the process less defined. Today, we can go further. Our data is sharper, our analysis is faster, and our model is more precise. Instead of focusing on entire precincts, we're focused on street segments, on intersections, on clusters. Wherever we see problematic pockets of crime and violence emerging, that is where we act. Not the whole neighborhood, not the entire command. That's how our violence reduction zones come to be. Every day, we deploy about 650 additional officers to our 42 citywide zones. These deployments are flexible, adaptable to shifting conditions, and ensure that we are combating crime exactly where it's happening. And this location-based scalpel approach is working. In the first quarter of 2025, major crime across our 42 zones dropped 25%, with a 71% decline in murder, a 48% drop in shootings. We have made remarkable progress against crime compared to a year ago. But every New Yorker should know that it could be so much better. We're still about 15% above the crime levels of 2018, and there are several reasons why. Most notably, 2018 was the last full year before drastic changes to our state's criminal justice laws took effect. These changes had wide-ranging consequences. And over the past 7 years, one thing has become very clear. New York City does not have a surging crime problem. We do have a surging recidivism problem. 39% of the people arrested last quarter were arrested at least twice in the same 3-month period. That's a 46% increase from 2018. And 21% of those arrested last quarter were arrested 3 or more times in the same period, which is an 85% increase. Plain and simple, the recidivism rates are out of control. We have a system where the same individuals are arrested over and over, often for the same offenses, sometimes in the same neighborhoods, even on the same blocks. And in too many cases, they're released before the paperwork from their last arrest is even complete. That is not just demoralizing for the officers doing the work, it's destabilizing for our communities. Our officers are doing a great job. Last year, they made the most felony arrests in over 20 years. But the front end of the system can only carry so much if the back end doesn't function. We've been very transparent about what needs to be done, and it begins with the discovery law. As you know, in 2019, New York State passed sweeping criminal justice reforms, including a major overhaul of discovery. The law was intended to create fairness, but in practice, it made it harder to hold offenders accountable and easier for strong cases to collapse. Cases are getting dismissed, not because of weak evidence, but because of process breakdowns, technicalities that have nothing to do with guilt or innocence. That's not what the reform was supposed to produce, and it's happening at scale. Over the past few months, we've built strong momentum for change. Governor Hochul, Mayor Adams, all 5 district attorneys, leaders at every level of government, and the public that we serve. There is broad agreement. The law must be fixed. And again, this is not about retreating from the spirit of these reforms. It's about closing dangerous, unforeseen loopholes that have prioritized criminal defendants over crime victims. When a case falls apart on an irrelevant technicality, a few things happen. The witness stops cooperating, the arresting officer sees their work go nowhere, and the person who committed the crime walks out the door. No consequences, no record, no reason to change their criminal behavior. Most importantly, the victim is re-traumatized, they are silenced, and their suffering is dismissed. That is not a functioning justice system. As you've probably heard, lawmakers are close to a deal on discovery. I am eager to see the actual language because the details matter. If it's strong, I will say so. If it's not, I will say that too. I am a straight shooter, and this is not a time for window dressing or half measures. And the issues that we have aren't only at the state level. Too often, we're seeing cases declined or resolved through adjournments and contemplation of dismissal or ACDs, even when there's a pattern of repeat offending. And when that happens without careful consideration of public safety, it sends the wrong message to victims, to offenders, and to the officers doing the work. Make no mistake about it. Our DAs are our most important partners, and our work together undoubtedly makes our city safer. But I've challenged them, in particular our partners in Manhattan and in the Bronx, to reevaluate any blanket policy that makes the revolving door spin faster. These aren't isolated mistakes or unintended consequences. These are choices, which means we can easily change them. Our tailored strategies to reduce crime and violence in our city are making New Yorkers safer. But those same New Yorkers are telling us that even as crime falls, that they still do not feel safe here. And the conditions that they point to are nearly universal. Out-of-control scooters and e-bikes, like I just mentioned, abandoned vehicles, illegal parking, homeless encampments, unreasonable noise, unlicensed smoke shops, and open-air drug markets. All of this, especially when it's compounded day after day, gives people the impression of chaos and disorder. It erodes our sense of public safety, and New Yorkers have had enough. Over the past 6 years, calls to 311 centered on quality of life have nearly doubled. From 2018 to 2024, complaints about drug activity have gone up by more than 1,000%. Calls about homeless encampments are up about 560%, illegal parking complaints are up more than 200%, and noise complaints have increased by 120%. New Yorkers are frustrated and they're pleading for our help. And that help arrived the other day with the launch of the NYPD's new Quality of Life Division. Starting in 6 commands across 4 boroughs, select officers are assigned to specialized Q teams, responding to 311 complaints and addressing quality of life conditions in their precinct or their PSA 7 days a week. Q team members received additional training in the wide range of jobs that they'll handle every day, and they coordinate closely with our agency partners. The Quality of Life Division centralizes several department units and other resources under a new Chief of Quality of Life who will coordinate borough-based and citywide deployments. This is a major restructuring, And when fully implemented, this initiative will involve the reorganization of nearly 2,000 members of our department. But I want to assure everyone, this will not affect staffing associated with 911 emergency response. Ultimately, this is an internal reorganization of personnel already within precincts and a recentering of our approach to public safety. As we always do at the NYPD, comprehensive data will be collected from our work in the field, and next month, that work will be assessed and evaluated in our first QSTAT meeting. These monthly meetings will focus on command responses to 311, community engagement, and the identification of chronic conditions and strategies to resolve them. And just like ComStat meetings do, QSTAT will provide enhanced accountability, coordination, and accurately measure our progress. QSTAT is the logical evolution of the ComStat revolution that began 32 years ago. We are ushering in the next era of policing in New York City at the right time, in the right places, and for the right reasons. Since this division was announced last January, some have criticized it as a return to zero-tolerance policing, which is a complete mischaracterization of what we're doing here. This is different policy for a different purpose. In 2025, quality of life enforcement is not about preventing more serious crime. In fact, it is not about crime at all. It is about improving quality of life, being responsive to community complaints, and fixing the very real issues that people are dealing with every day. That's why we're doing this. The vast majority of New Yorkers have never been the victim of a crime. In fact, most of them have never even witnessed a crime. But many of them have struggled to find parking because of abandoned vehicles taking up spots in their neighborhoods, or had to jump out of the way of an e-bike on the sidewalk, or avoided walking through a park with their kids because people were there openly using drugs. These encounters make people feel unsafe. They make you not want to walk through the neighborhood or take the bus or go to the corner store, and that needs to change. But again, for those who either didn't hear or aren't listening, this is not zero-tolerance policing. There are no quotas or inflexible activity targets. When correcting these conditions, our officers will always have full discretion, and discretion starts with engagement. For too long, these issues fell through the cracks. Not serious crimes, but serious problems. Now, with a dedicated structure, trained teams, and daily focus, we are treating quality of life the way New Yorkers experience it, as a top priority. Now I want to shift gears for a moment because we're in a room full of people who care deeply about the law. And because I am a lawyer myself, I want to spend a few minutes talking about some of the topics that I think will be of interest to you. First, an issue that is front and center, immigration enforcement. On this topic, blessedly, I can be brief. The NYPD does not engage in civil immigration enforcement, period. That's the law, and we will follow the law. Second, how we handle protests. This comes down to knowing where the line is and staying on the right side of it. Nowhere is that more visible or more tested than in how we uphold the First Amendment. Because public safety isn't just about crime, it's also about rights. And while we've seen fewer protests this year compared to last year, they're still happening. The NYPD is not in the business of policing opinions. People in the city are free to speak, to gather, to protest, even when their message is loud, divisive, and in some instances, deeply offensive. But the line between protest and criminality is not theoretical. We see it in real time, and when that line gets crossed, when a protest turns into harassment or trespass or targeted threats, that's when the NYPD steps in. Since October 7th, there have been thousands of demonstrations across the 5 boroughs, many of them lawful, some of them not. We've seen buildings stormed, students threatened, services disrupted, neighborhoods gridlocked. That's not protected speech, that's breaking the law. We hold the line between chaos and order, and our officers are trained to manage protest activity with consistency, restraint, and clarity. It's not easy work, but our officers do it day in, day out, with professionalism and a deep understanding of the rights that they are sworn to uphold. Third, department reforms. It's one thing to enforce the law with fairness. It's another to live those values inside of the NYPD. That's where real reform begins. From day one, we've set clear expectations from top to bottom. If we want the public to believe in this department, they need to see integrity at every level. That's what drove our first wave of internal reform. Over the past 5 months, we've rebuilt the NYPD's leadership team. We've overhauled the Internal Affairs Bureau. We've returned thousands of officers from administrative roles back to patrol. We've reformed our overtime policy to prevent misuse and ensure internal compliance, not just for cost savings, but to reinforce standards and accountability at every level. And we have amended our vehicle pursuit policy to give officers smarter guidance, clearer protocols, and a stronger foundation for decision-making in the field. Each of these reforms had a purpose, and together they point to a department that is evolving and serious about getting better. Fourth, how we hold ourselves accountable. Because public trust doesn't just depend on how we respond to crime. It depends on how we respond when our officers' conduct falls short of our own standards. At the NYPD, the expectation is simple. If officers violate policy, if they break protocol or misuse their authority, we will act thoroughly, responsibly, and decisively. And through Compliance Stat, we've created a new framework for creating accountability, a data-driven forum in which department leadership holds supervisors responsible for compliance deficiencies in their commands. The message is simple. All our officers have to follow the rules, and if they don't follow the rules, that cannot be ignored or excused. Accountability is part of what it means to be a member of the NYPD, and we're backing that culture of accountability with action. Recently, we moved to close a loophole that allowed a significant amount of CCRB cases to be dismissed automatically when they were near the 18-month statute of limitations, not because the facts were in dispute, but because the clock ran out. That is not accountability, that is bureaucracy. Finally, how we handle stops. Stop, question, and frisk remains one of the most scrutinized tools in American policing. And in a department this large, with this much history, how we use our authority matters as much as when we use it. Today, our officers are trained to ensure that every stop is supported by reasonable suspicion and documented in accordance with department policy. And our department has made tremendous progress with this over the past decade. But the outstanding piece of that process has been accountability. That's why we're actively reviewing stop data, identifying trends, and working to correct deficiencies, not waiting for complaints to trickle in. And any willful noncompliance with our policy will now result in discipline, not just more training. Because it's true across the board. Consequences change behavior. It's not enough to say we have standards. We have to show that we stand by them and enforce them. I love working in government. I take real joy in public service, and I have deep respect for the people who show up every day to make their neighbors' lives better, whether they wear a uniform, draft legislation, or stand up in court. That's why it means something to speak here, at a school that trains public servants, at a forum that's been bringing together law and leadership for decades. Because the work of public safety doesn't belong to police alone. It belongs to all of us. It's shaped by the laws we write, the standards we uphold, and the systems we hold accountable. You don't have to swear an oath to care about safety, and you don't have to be a cop to help make this city stronger. If you're in this room, if you're studying the law, teaching it, practicing it, or changing it, you're already part of the work. So thank you for that. Thank you for caring about the city, not just in theory, but in practice. And thank you for being part of the long, unfinished work of making New York fairer, safer, and more just. It's been an honor to be with you here this morning.
Thank you, Commissioner, for those remarks. We have microphones here. We're just going to take a few quick questions. Please, no speeches, just right to a question. Let's begin here.
Commissioner Michael Myers, President of the New York Civil Rights Coalition. My question is very brief and to the point. CCRB, the Civilian Complaint Review Board. The previous commissioners refused to come to CCRB meetings, which are public, to speak to the CCRB board itself. The CCRB has not, to my knowledge, yet invited you. I want to know if you will attend a monthly meeting of the CCRB public meeting so you can address the issues of police brutality and lack of accountability, because the other police commissioners have reduced the penalties, ignored the administrative law judge's findings. So
So
that's
to
my
answer-
question.
To answer your question head on, I will, of course, attend a meeting of the CCRB board. I also want to tell you, and I briefly touched on it in this speech, under my leadership, the department has been working to really change the way we work with CCRB. I mentioned the thing about the statute of limitations and not letting cases that are 60 days from the expiration of that period just be administratively closed. And so we are taking real steps to change our relationship with CCRB, make it more productive, get evidence over to them faster so that hopefully we can get cases back from them faster as well. I've already met with the executive director of CCRB, Jonathan Darsh, who I've worked with for a long time in city government and I have very deep respect for, as well as the new chair or interim chair of CCRB. And I look forward to continuing that partnership.
Before we take our next question, nobody else get up, please. We'll just take these 5 here and then we'll wrap up. Go ahead, sir.
JT, I so would appreciate it on parade day, your officers don't tell me where I can stand if I'm not standing in a frozen zone. And also at subway train station, correspond with the trans police stations. I so would appreciate if they don't approach me and say I can't speak to the station agents, which is also annoying. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Peggy Harrisman, and I run a legal aid organization serving low-income people in the city. On your March 11th testimony before the City Council, and again today, you talked about discipline and accountability for police officers, and that is something that we like to hear. I like to hear. So I'm wondering when one of those officers is Lieutenant Jonathan Rivera, who shot 5 years ago Alan Felice. Lieutenant Rivera has, I believe, 39 allegations against him. He's 5 substantiated complaints from the CCRB, 6 lawsuits, including one for shooting a 15-year-old. Are you going to follow the recommendation of your own Deputy Commissioner, Rosemary Maldonado, to terminate the employment of Lieutenant Rivera for killing Alan Felice and to make all of us safer by not having this cop on the force?
So, as you know, because you've been at this for a long time, this is still a matter that is winding its way up to my office, so I cannot comment on it at this time.
Can I just quickly follow up? When will you make a decision?
My turn.
As I mentioned, this matter is still winding its way through the process up to my office, and when it reaches my desk, I will review it.
Thank you.
Michelle Winfield. I would like to, first of all, thank you because I have seen an improvement in policing.
Thank you.
But I'd like to bring to your attention as a question to look at the notice of trespass law that's being used. Because in the 13th precinct, it has been misused. Could you look into that? Thank you so much.
We will. Thank you.
Morning, Commissioner. My name is Sarita Daftery. I live in East New York. I also am concerned about some of the comments that you've made about discovery reform. Cases are not being dismissed solely on technicalities. They're being dismissed if there's a finding by a judge, no automatic dismissal, that the prosecution has not met their constitutional obligation, not a technicality, to turn over evidence. And a piece of that is the NYPD getting the evidence to them. So I'd like to know what solutions you think should be in place on the NYPD side, along with whatever else you've suggested, to get that evidence to the prosecution. And I also would like to know, given I referenced that I live in East New York, I have been the victim of a crime in my community, and I would like to know what the NYPD is doing to assess for the number of people that you've identified as recidivists or who've been arrested multiple times. What number of those people are currently sitting on a wait list for city services that they have not been able to access? Things like supportive housing, intensive mobile treatment teams, ACT teams. We know there are thousands of people on those wait
Okay, so I clearly don't have the data to answer the second question at my disposal.
I was asking
here
if
at
the
this time,
NYPD
but
is
I will
seeking to get that
focus
data.
on the first question that you posed about what the police department is doing to meet or to help prosecutors meet their discovery burden. First, I want to make it clear to everyone that the reforms that we recommend at the NYPD in partnership with the 5 DAs, the mayor, and the governor are not designed in any way to retreat from the spirit of the criminal justice reforms of
Don't think that's
20
accurate, but I appreciate your answer.
if I can just answer the question, of 2019. I don't think that people should be confronted with evidence in the 11th hour. I think that they should get the full relevant evidence in order to mount a proper defense of their case. However, the discovery laws as they exist today create real significant problems, and the reforms that we have put forward are designed to address what is perhaps unintended loopholes created by the 2019 laws. As part of that change, the department has an enormous discovery burden, and we work every day with our prosecutorial partners to meet that burden. We have revamped many of our systems, our body camera system, our case management system, our arrest processing system, in order to be able to get our prosecutorial partners direct or more direct access to the information that they are required to put forward. And so, yes, the department has made real changes over the past several years to how we get information over to our district attorneys. As one very obvious example, it used to be that the cops had little blue books that they carried around with them, and they were called their activity logs. And you'd see every cop carried one around, and every time they went to a job, they'd write in pen in their activity log. The sergeant would come around and he would sign the activity log. We completely digitized that because it had to be digitized. But among the reasons we did it was to more thoroughly and completely comply with the discovery burden so that now that can be sent over digitally.
Hi, good morning, Commissioner Tisch. Thank you so much for making the time to come speak with the public and start to create a dialogue. I like what you have said about accountability, but I would really love to see you actually listen to community members. I know that you are not able to talk about the details of the case against Lieutenant Rivera for killing Alan Feliz, but I'm wondering if you can give New Yorkers an idea of when you could make a decision, because when Deputy Commissioner Rosemary Maldonado made the recommendation for Daniel Pantaleo to be fired after killing Eric Garner, it only took Commissioner O'Neill 2 weeks to make that decision. I know that Deputy Commissioner Maldonado made this recommendation for Lieutenant Rivera to be fired over 2 months ago now. So just wondering if there's a timeline for you. Thank you.
As I mentioned, I cannot comment on this case because it is currently making its way ultimately up to my office. Thank you.
Thank you again, Commissioner Tisch, for joining us this morning. Thank you all for being here. Please join us again soon. As I mentioned, we have events coming up May 1st and May 13th, and we hope to see you again soon here at New York Law School. Thank you.